My name is Marcus Walker, a 32-year-old construction manager from Portland. Growing up, family meant everything to me, especially my little sister Haley. While our parents struggled financially, I worked tirelessly to build stability, often sending money their way whenever they needed help. Last summer, I planned the perfect BBQ at my new house, the first time hosting my family there. Then came that strange text from Mom too sick to attend. What happened next shattered everything I believed about family loyalty. Before I continue this heartbreaking story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted. Trust me, you will want to hear how this unfolds. I grew up in a small town in rural Oregon, about 90 minutes outside Portland. For most of my childhood, we were what you would call middle class, not wealthy by any means, but comfortable enough. My dad, Richard, worked at the local lumber mill, while my mom stayed home to take care of me and my sister Haley, who is 4 years younger than me. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house with a big backyard, where Dad would grill on weekends and Mom would tend to her vegetable garden. Those were simple times, but looking back, they were some of the happiest days of my life. Everything changed when I turned 15. The lumber mill downsized and Dad was among the first to be let go. He had worked there for nearly 20 years, but that counted for nothing when the company needed to cut costs. I remember the night he came home, his face drained of color, still wearing his work boots caked with sawdust. "They let me go," he said quietly at dinner. Mom dropped her fork, and Haley, only 11 at the time, asked innocently if that meant Dad could come to her school play next week. The look they exchanged told me everything I needed to know. Our lives were about to change drastically. Dad tried finding other work, but in our small town, opportunities were scarce. He picked up odd jobs helping at the local hardware store, doing handyman work for neighbors, even driving the school bus for a while. But none of these jobs paid anywhere near what he had been making at the mill. Bills started piling up on the kitchen counter, and hushed arguments between my parents became more frequent, usually after Haley and I had gone to bed. I was a sophomore in high school then, but I knew I needed to step up. I started mowing lawns on weekends and after school. During the summer break, I worked at the local grocery store stocking shelves from 5 in the morning until noon, then spent afternoons doing yard work for elderly neighbors. Every dollar I earned went into a jar in my bedroom, and at the end of each month I would quietly slip most of it to Mom, keeping just enough for school lunches and the occasional movie with friends. "You should be saving for college," Marcus, Mom would protest, trying to hand the money back. "I am saving," I would insist. "This is just extra." We both knew it was a lie, but she would eventually accept it with tears in her eyes. Despite everything, I maintained my grades and stayed active in school. I played baseball not because I was particularly good at it, but because Haley loved coming to my games. She would sit in the bleachers with Mom, cheering louder than anyone else whenever I came up to bat. After games, regardless of whether we won or lost, she would run up to me with that gap-toothed smile of hers and declare, "You were the best one out there, Marcus." Haley and I grew especially close during those difficult years. Being younger, she didn't fully understand the financial strain our family was under, and I worked hard to shield her from it. When she needed supplies for school projects, I made sure she had them. When her friends were getting new clothes for the start of the school year, I picked up extra shifts to make sure she didn't feel left out. One night when I found her crying because she couldn't go on the 6th grade field trip to the Science Museum in Portland, I promised her that she would never miss out on anything important if I could help it. "I will always look out for you, Hales," I told her, using my nickname for her. "That is what big brothers are for." She wiped her tears and hugged me tight. "You are the best brother ever," she whispered. That moment cemented something in me, a determination to always be there for my family no matter what. After graduating high school, I decided to stay local and attend community college. It was the only option that made financial sense. I worked construction during the summers and on weekends during the school year, taking classes part-time. It took me 6 years instead of 4 to get my degree in construction management, but I graduated debt-free and with valuable hands-on experience. At 25, I landed a job with Peterson Construction, one of the larger firms in Portland. The starting salary was more than my parents had ever made combined, and for the first time in a decade, I felt like I could breathe financially. I moved into a small apartment in Portland, but made the drive home at least twice a month. By then, Haley was in college herself, studying education at Western Oregon University. My parents were still struggling. Dad's health had begun to decline due to years of physical labor, and Mom had taken a part-time job at the local elementary school cafeteria. Without hesitation, I started sending money home regularly. When Haley's car broke down during her sophomore year, I sent $3,000 for repairs. When Mom mentioned their refrigerator was making strange noises, I bought them a new one. When Dad needed dental work not covered by insurance, I covered the $5,000 bill. Over the next 7 years, I sent home well over $40,000, money I never expected to be repaid. They were my family, and this was what families did for each other. Last year, after years of hard work and saving, despite the money sent home, I was promoted to senior project manager and finally purchased my first home, a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a large backyard, perfect for entertaining. It was modest compared to some of my colleagues' homes, but to me, it represented everything I had worked for. I was especially excited to host my family there, to show them that all our collective sacrifices had led to something tangible and good. To celebrate both my new home and my promotion, I decided to host a summer BBQ. I wanted everything to be perfect, not just for my friends and coworkers, but especially for my family. I spent weeks planning the menu, buying new outdoor furniture, and making sure the yard looked immaculate. I installed string lights across the patio, bought a new grill, and even built a fire pit where we could gather in the evening. I was meticulous about the food preparation. I marinated steaks overnight, prepared homemade burger patties with my special blend of spices, and made Mom's famous potato salad from the recipe she had taught me years ago. I remembered all of Haley's favorite foods: corn on the cob with extra butter, watermelon slices, and my specialty lemonade that she had always loved as a kid. The day before the BBQ, I called home to confirm they were coming. Mom answered with her usual warmth, assuring me they would leave early to beat traffic and help me set up. "We would not miss this for the world, honey," she said. "Dad and I are so proud of you, and Haley is excited to see your new place." Family gatherings had always been important to us Walkers. Even during the toughest financial times, we had managed to come together for birthdays, holidays, and special occasions. These gatherings were usually simple affairs, home-cooked meals, board games, and conversation, but they reinforced our bond as a family. This barbecue was meant to be a continuation of that tradition, but in my new home, symbolizing a new chapter for all of us. As I hung up the phone that night, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. After years of struggle and sacrifice, I was finally in a position to host my family in a home I owned, to feed them from a kitchen that was mine, to show them that their eldest son and brother had made something of himself. Little did I know that this eagerly anticipated family reunion would never happen, and that the next 24 hours would change my understanding of family forever. The morning of the BBQ arrived with perfect weather, 78 degrees, clear blue skies, and just enough of a breeze to keep things comfortable. I was up at 6, too excited to sleep any longer. With coffee in hand, I stood on my back deck and mentally checked off everything I had prepared. The coolers were filled with ice. The meat was marinating in the refrigerator, and the backyard looked like something out of a home and garden magazine. For the first time since moving in, I felt like this house was truly my home. By 9, I was already receiving texts from friends confirming their attendance. My college roommate Derek messaged that he was bringing an extra case of craft beer. My coworker Jessica asked if she could bring her famous 7-layer dip. Everyone seemed excited, and their enthusiasm only added to mine. The party was set to start at 3, with my family expected to arrive around 1 to help set up and have some quiet time together before everyone else arrived. By noon, I had heard from almost everyone except my family. I tried not to worry, figuring they were probably on the road already. I sent a quick text to Mom: "Drive safe. Can't wait to see you guys." I busied myself with last-minute preparations, occasionally glancing at my phone for a response. 1 o'clock came and went. No sign of them, no messages. I called Mom's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with Dad's. I tried Haley, but her phone rang several times before going to voicemail as well. A knot of worry began to form in my stomach. It wasn't like them not to communicate, especially when we had plans. At 1:30 I tried again, Still nothing. By 2 o'clock I was genuinely concerned. They should have been at my house an hour ago. Had there been an accident on the highway, I checked traffic reports online. Nothing unusual reported. Then at 2:15, just 45 minutes before guests were set to arrive, my phone finally chimed with a text from Mom. "Marcus, so sorry, honey, but your father and I have come down with terrible food poisoning from that new seafood place we tried last night. We're both too sick to make the drive. Haley is staying behind to take care of us. We're so disappointed to miss your party. Have fun, and we'll reschedule soon. Love you." I stared at the message in disbelief. Food poisoning, both of them, and severe enough that Haley needed to stay behind to care for them. It seemed strange, but I had no reason to doubt them. I immediately called Mom back, concerned about their condition, but again straight to voicemail. I texted back, "I'm so sorry to hear that. Do you need anything? I can come by tomorrow with supplies, or we can reschedule the BBQ for next weekend when you're feeling better." Her response came quickly. "No need to reschedule for everyone else. We're just too sick right now. Doctor said it should pass in a couple of days. Enjoy your party, honey. Send pictures." There was something off about her messages. They were shorter and more dismissive than Mom's usual warm, detailed texts. But I pushed the thought aside, attributing it to her feeling unwell. I called Haley, hoping to get more information about my parents' condition. After several rings, she picked up but sounded rushed. "Hey, Marcus can't really talk right now. Mom's pretty bad and Dad just threw up again. I'm playing nurse today," she said, with what sounded like voices and music in the background. "Do you need me to come over? I can bring medicines or clear soups," I offered. No, we're fine. Just enjoy your party. I've got to go. Dad needs help getting to the bathroom." She hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by enough food to feed 30 people, feeling deflated. My family, the guests of honor, wouldn't be coming. The whole point of this gathering had been to share my new home with them, to thank them for their support over the years, to show them what their eldest son had accomplished. Now it felt incomplete. At 3 o'clock, my first guests arrived. Co-workers from the construction firm followed shortly by neighbors and friends from college. Everyone raved about the house, the food, the perfect weather. The party was by all objective measures a success. People mingled in the backyard, the new grill performed perfectly, and there was laughter and conversation flowing freely. But throughout the afternoon and evening, I found myself constantly checking my phone, hoping for updates from my family. I tried calling again around 6, but still no answer from any of them. I left voicemails expressing my concern and asking them to call me back when they could. "You seem distracted," Derek observed, finding me alone by the fire pit staring at my phone. "Everything okay?" I explained about my family's sudden illness and their absence. Derek frowned slightly. "All of them got food poisoning, from the same place, and they're not answering calls." When he put it like that, it did sound suspicious. But what reason would they have to lie? "They're probably just resting," I said, though I didn't fully believe it myself. As the evening progressed, I tried to enjoy the company of my friends, but the absence of my family cast a shadow over what should have been a perfect day. Around 9, I received a brief voice message from Haley. "Hey bro, just checking in. Mom and Dad are finally sleeping. Too busy taking care of them to talk. Hope the party was fun. Love you." Again, there was something odd about her message, background noises that sounded like people talking and laughing, not the quiet atmosphere of a house with two severely ill people. But I dismissed it as my imagination. By 11, most guests had left, leaving just Derek and a few close friends helping me clean up. "Great party man, Derek," said, gathering empty bottles. "But I know it wasn't what you pictured without your family here." I nodded, grateful for his understanding. "I'm going to drive out to check on them tomorrow morning," I decided aloud, "just to make sure they're okay." That night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet, I lay awake in bed replaying the strange messages from my mother and sister. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. Were they really sick? Was there something they weren't telling me? Or was I overthinking things because I was disappointed? Sleep finally came around 2 in the morning, but it was restless and filled with unsettling dreams. When my alarm went off at 7, I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, a sense of unease settling in my stomach that had nothing to do with the beer I'd consumed the night before. I hit the road by 8 the next morning, travel mug of coffee in the cup holder, and a box of saltine crackers and ginger ale in the backseat, home remedies my mom had always used when I was sick as a kid. The drive to my parents' house took about 90 minutes, giving me plenty of time to worry. What if they were seriously ill and downplaying it? Should I have gone last night instead of waiting until morning? The familiar landscape of rural Oregon passed by my window, farmland giving way to the denser woods surrounding my hometown. I tried calling both my parents and Haley several times during the drive, but all calls went unanswered. This only increased my concern. If Haley was there taking care of them, why wasn't she picking up? I pulled into my parents' driveway just before 9:30. The first thing I noticed was that both their cars were gone. Dad's old Ford pickup and Mom's Subaru were nowhere to be seen. Haley's Honda, which she'd had since high school, the one I'd helped repair countless times, wasn't there either. The house looked closed-up blinds, drawn Sunday newspaper, still in its plastic wrap at the end of the driveway. Alarm bells were now ringing loudly in my head. I used my key to enter the house, calling out as I opened the door. "Mom, Dad, Haley. It's Marcus." No answer. The house was silent and had the still, slightly stuffy air of a place that had been empty for days. The kitchen sink was dry. No dirty dishes, no medicine bottles on the counter, no evidence of anyone suffering from food poisoning. I checked my parents' bedroom bed, made perfectly no sign of recent use. The guest room where Haley usually stayed showed no evidence of her presence either. Their suitcases, which they kept in the hall closet, were missing. Confused and increasingly concerned, I went next door to the Thompsons, who had been our neighbors for over 20 years. Mrs. Thompson answered the door, surprise evident on her face. "Marcus, what a nice surprise. Your parents didn't mention you were coming to visit." "They didn't. Do you know where they are? They told me they were sick with food poisoning." Her eyebrows rose. "Food poisoning, no dear. They left on vacation 2 days ago. Your father was so excited, came over to ask us to collect their mail. Said something about a beach resort in Mexico. First big vacation they've had in years, from what he told me." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Mexico? Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Cancun, I believe. Your sister drove them to the airport. George helped your dad load their luggage into her car. She must have noticed my expression because her voice softened with concern. "Marcus, is everything all right?" I mumbled something about a misunderstanding and thanked her before returning to my car. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. If what Mrs. Thompson said was true, then my family had deliberately lied to me. But why? I opened Instagram, where Haley was most active. She hadn't posted anything to her main feed recently, but when I checked her stories, something I rarely bothered with, I felt the world tilt beneath me. There they were, multiple photos and short videos posted over the last 2 days. My parents and sister at what was clearly a luxury beach resort. Mom in a floppy sun hat, smiling widely with a colorful cocktail in hand. Dad in swimming trunks I'd never seen before, lounging by an infinity pool overlooking turquoise waters. Haley taking selfies in a new bikini, making peace signs and pouting at the camera. The most recent post from just 3 hours ago was captioned, "Day 2 of our amazing vacation. Best decision ever number, family time number, Cancun number, no regrets." I recognized the resort from the distinctive architecture and landscaping visible in the background, the Royal Sands Resort in Cancun. An expensive, all-inclusive, that I'd once looked into for a potential vacation of my own before deciding it was too pricey. As I scrolled through more photos and videos, my initial shock gave way to a cold, creeping realization. Last month, my parents had called me in a panic about their roof, claiming it was leaking badly and needed immediate repairs. They'd gotten an estimate of $3,000, which they didn't have. Without hesitation, I'd transferred the money to them the same day. 2 weeks later, Haley had texted about her car's transmission failing a $1,500 repair she couldn't afford on her teacher's assistant salary. Again, I'd sent the money immediately. Now I understood where that money had really gone. Not to a leaking roof or a broken transmission, but to a luxury vacation in Cancun. a vacation they had deliberately hidden from me, going so far as to lie about being sick to avoid my BBQ. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more posts. There were comments from Haley's friends. "You guys totally deserve this break, and your parents look so happy, and about time you all treated yourselves." In one photo, my parents were smiling broadly at a fancy restaurant, raising glasses of wine in a toast. My father was wearing a new button-down shirt I'd never seen before. My mother had on an expensive-looking dress, and what appeared to be new jewelry. Haley's caption read, "Celebrating the good life with the best parents ever, number blessed." The timestamp showed this had been posted at almost the exact time I'd received the text claiming they were too sick to attend my BBQ. I sat in my car outside my parents' empty house, my body physically reacting to the betrayal. My stomach dropped, my chest tightened, and I felt lightheaded. Memories flooded back of working 2 jobs in high school to help with bills, of postponing my own dreams to support theirs, of the countless times I'd gone without so they wouldn't have to. I thought about the personal vacation I'd canceled last year when Dad said he needed dental work. The savings I'd depleted when Mom's car needed replacing. The extra shifts I'd picked up when Haley said her rent had increased unexpectedly. Had it all been lies? Had they been manipulating me for years? The thought was too painful to consider, but the evidence was literally in my hands, bright and colorful on my phone screen. I tried calling each of them again, my calls going straight to voicemail. I left messages controlled at first, then increasingly hurt and angry as I continued to scroll through more vacation photos. The final straw was a video Haley had posted of them, all parasailing, clearly taken that morning. "Living our best lives," the caption read. It had been posted at almost the exact time I was driving to their house, worried sick about their well-being. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat and started the car. The drive back to Portland was a blur, my mind racing with questions and realizations. How long had they been taking advantage of my generosity? How many of their emergencies had been fabricated? Why had they felt the need to lie about this vacation instead of simply telling me they were going? And most painfully, did they see me as a son and brother, or just as a convenient source of income? By the time I reached my empty house, the house I'd been so excited to show them just 24 hours earlier, my shock had hardened into something more painful and enduring. I spent the rest of that Sunday in a daze, ignoring texts from friends asking about the barbecue, unable to focus on anything but the images of my family enjoying their secret vacation with the money I'd sent to fix problems that apparently didn't exist. The next 2 days passed in a haze of conflicting emotions. I called in sick to work on Monday, something I rarely did. I couldn't face people, couldn't pretend everything was normal when it felt like my foundation had been shattered. I alternated between periods of numbing disbelief and surges of white-hot anger. During moments of clarity, I began to review the pattern of financial support I'd provided over the years. I dug through old bank statements tracking transfers and checks sent to my family. The total was staggering, over $47,000 in the past 7 years alone. Money for car repairs, medical bills, home maintenance, utility payments, when they were at risk of disconnection, helping Haley with her student loans, covering the deposit on her apartment, replacing appliances for my parents, and countless other emergencies that had always seemed legitimate at the time. Now I questioned everything. Had the roof ever actually leaked? Did Dad really need dental work? Was Haley's rent increase even real? I remembered sacrifices I'd made to help them, passing up a vacation to Europe with friends after college, driving an old car for years longer than necessary, living in a cramped apartment while my colleagues bought houses. All because I believed my family needed my financial support more than I needed those things for myself. By Tuesday, I discovered more discrepancies. Social media posts showing my parents at restaurants during times they'd claimed to be too broke to buy groceries. Photos of Haley with a designer handbag purchased the week after I'd sent money for her overdue electric bill. A check-in at a casino from the same weekend Dad had called saying his medication wasn't covered by insurance and he couldn't afford the $200 to fill the prescription, which I'd immediately sent. The more I discovered, the more it felt like waking up from a lifelong deception. Had I been naive? Had they been laughing at my gullibility, while spending my hard-earned money on luxuries. On Wednesday morning, my phone finally rang with my mother's number. I almost didn't answer, but some deep-seated need for explanations won out. "Marcus, we're back." Mom's voice was cheerful, as if nothing was wrong. "How was your BBQ, honey?" Her casual tone, after days of ignored calls and messages, pushed me over the edge. "You tell me, Mom. Was the resort nice? How was the parasailing?" A long pause followed. "What are you talking about?" "I saw Haley's Instagram stories. All of them. I know you weren't sick. I know you were in Cancun at the Royal Sands Resort. I drove to your house on Sunday morning and the Thompsons told me everything." Another silence then, Marcus. "We deserved a little vacation. We haven't had one in years." "That's not the point, and you know it. You lied to me. You said you were sick to avoid my BBQ. And you used the money I sent for the roof repairs and Haley's car transmission to pay for it, didn't you?" "Well, we were going to tell you eventually." "When, Mom? When were you going to tell me? After you got back and made up some miracle recovery story? Or were you never going to mention it at all?" I heard muffled voices, then my father came on the line. "Marcus, you're overreacting. It was just a little white lie so you wouldn't feel bad that we chose a vacation over your BBQ. You can afford to help us out. You make good money." His dismissive tone stung worse than anything else. "This isn't about the money, Dad. It's about the lies. It's about you and Mom and Haley actively deceiving me for what appears to be years." "Now hold on," he interrupted. "We didn't." "You did," I said firmly. "I've been going through my records. The dental work last year. The car repairs, Haley's emergency rent increases. Were any of those real?" He sputtered something about me keeping score and how family helps family, but his non-answer was confirmation enough. My phone buzzed with a text from Haley. "OMG. Marcus, stop being so dramatic. It was just a vacation. You should be happy we got to relax for once. You're acting like we robbed a bank or something." The callousness of her message after everything I'd done for her over the years felt like a physical blow. I remembered the nights I'd stayed up late helping her with college applications, the weekends spent fixing her car, the care packages I'd sent during her finals weeks, always with encouraging notes and her favorite snacks. "Put me on speaker," I said to my father. "I want to talk to all of you together." Once I knew they could all hear me, I tried to express how deeply their deception had hurt me. I wasn't angry about the money itself, I explained, but about the calculated lies, the manipulation, and the complete disregard for my feelings. Their responses left me cold. Mom claimed I was being selfish for not wanting them to have nice things. Dad accused me of using money to control them. Haley said I was just jealous they had gone on a vacation without me. Not once did any of them acknowledge how their actions had affected me. Not once did they consider that I might have had my own plans for the money I'd earned. Money I'd willingly shared with them because I believed they truly needed it. The final breaking point came when my mother said, "You owe us for raising you, Marcus. Parents sacrifice everything for their children. Now it's your turn to sacrifice for us." I hung up mid-conversation, unable to continue. My phone immediately buzzed with texts from all three of them, ranging from angry accusations to attempts at justification. None contained anything resembling an apology. That evening I met Derek for a drink. I needed to talk to someone outside the situation, someone who knew me and my family, but could offer an objective perspective. "I've always thought something was off about how they treated you," Derek admitted after I'd explained everything. "Remember in college, when your mom called asking for money the same week, you were supposed to go on that ski trip with us, and then later we saw on Facebook that she'd gotten some expensive new living room furniture." I hadn't made that connection at the time, but now it seemed obvious. Derek went on to describe other instances he'd noticed over the years, patterns of convenience, where my family's emergencies often coincided with my financial successes or planned expenditures. "They know you're reliable, man. They know you'll always come through for them. They've been counting on that and taking advantage of it." That night I couldn't sleep. My body physically manifested the stress, my stomach in knots. No appetite. A constant headache pulsing behind my eyes. I tossed and turned, replaying years of interactions, seeing them in a new, painful light. The next morning I awoke to a family group text. My mother had written Marcus is having a tantrum because we went on vacation without telling him. He needs to grow up and realize the world doesn't revolve around him. My father had added, "Son, when you're ready to apologize for your outburst, we'll be here." Haley's contribution was perhaps the most hurtful. "Maybe now that your wallet is closed, you'll see if we actually want a relationship with you and not your money. Bet that scares you, doesn't it?" Their messages showed such a fundamental misunderstanding of my feelings that I couldn't even formulate a response. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. It was about trust, respect, and the painful realization that the people I'd sacrificed so much for saw me primarily as a resource rather than a person with feelings and needs of my own. The week after discovering my family's deception was one of the hardest of my life. I struggled to concentrate at work, making uncharacteristic mistakes that drew concerned looks from my supervisor. Projects that normally energized me felt meaningless. I went through the motions, but my mind kept circling back to those vacation photos and the years of apparent manipulation. By Friday, I knew I needed professional help processing what had happened. I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Reynolds, a therapist I'd seen briefly after a difficult breakup 2 years earlier. She had an opening the following Tuesday, which couldn't come soon enough. When I finally sat in her office, the emotions I'd been suppressing came pouring out. I told her everything: the BBQ, the discovery, the confrontation, and the painful realization that I might have been enabling my family's behavior for years. "What you're describing sounds like a pattern of financial abuse," Dr. Reynolds said after listening carefully. "It's particularly difficult to recognize when it comes from family, because we're conditioned to believe family always has our best interests at heart." Financial abuse. The term hit me like a physical blow. I had always associated abuse with physical violence or verbal cruelty, not with what my family had done. But as Dr. Reynolds explained the dynamics, the manipulation, the guilt-tripping, the exploitation of my desire to help, I recognized the pattern clearly. But why, I asked the question that had been haunting me for days. Why lie? Why not just ask for vacation money directly? "Because they likely knew on some level that what they were doing was wrong," she explained. "The fabricated emergencies created a justification both for you and for themselves. It's easier to ask for help with a necessary expense than to admit you want money for a luxury." Over the next hour, Dr. Reynolds helped me see how my childhood experiences had shaped my adult behavior. Growing up with financial instability had made me hyper-responsible, always putting others' needs before my own. My parents' struggles had created in me a deep-seated need to provide, to fix problems, to be the reliable one. And my family had learned they could count on that reliability, perhaps even exploit it. "Your sense of self-worth became tied to being the provider," she suggested. And they recognized that dynamic, consciously or not. That observation struck deep. How much of my identity was wrapped up in being the family hero? How much of my self-esteem came from being needed? If I wasn't the one they turned to in a crisis, who was I to them? These questions haunted me as I left her office. Over the next few days, I did the homework Dr. Reynolds had assigned, journaling about my feelings and memories, examining the patterns in my relationships, and reading articles about family dynamics and financial boundaries. The more I read, the more I recognized unhealthy patterns, not just in how my family treated me, but in how I allowed myself to be treated. One article particularly resonated with me. "Often the most difficult aspect of setting boundaries with family is not the external resistance, but our own internal guilt. We've been conditioned to believe that family obligations override personal needs, that saying no to family is selfish, and that love is measured by sacrifice." That was exactly it. The guilt I felt, even considering pulling back financial support, the fear that without my money, my family might not want a relationship with me at all. Had my love for them become so entangled with financial support that I couldn't separate the two? 4 days after my therapy session, while I was still processing these realizations, Haley posted a photo that pushed me further into my emotional abyss. It showed her shopping bags from expensive boutiques spread across her bed with the caption, "Little retail therapy with vacation savings number, treating myself." Vacation savings. The phrase echoed in my mind. I knew exactly where those savings had come from: the $1,500 I'd sent for her supposedly broken car transmission, money I'd worked overtime to provide, skipping social events and putting off buying new work boots I needed, all because I believed my sister was stranded without transportation. That night I hit rock bottom. Alone in my house, the house I'd been so excited to show my family, I broke down completely. Years of suppressed hurt came pouring out as I sobbed on my couch, feeling foolish, used, and profoundly alone. I had built my entire adult life around supporting people who, it seemed, viewed that support as an entitlement rather than a gift. I had postponed my own dreams, limited my own experiences, all to ensure my family's comfort and stability. And in return, they had lied, manipulated, and taken me for granted. The next morning, I called in sick to work again and spent the day reading everything I could find about family dynamics, emotional manipulation, and setting healthy boundaries. I ordered books with titles like When the People You Love Become the People You Dread, and Boundaries, When to Say Yes, How to Say Number. As painful as this period was, it was also clarifying. I began to see that my worth wasn't determined by what I could provide. I began to understand that real love doesn't come with financial obligations attached. I began to recognize that I deserved relationships based on mutual respect, not just what I could contribute. By the following weekend, I faced the hardest decision of my life: continue the pattern that had been established over decades, or break the cycle and establish boundaries that would protect my financial and emotional well-being, even if it meant potentially losing my relationship with my family. I spent that Saturday night sitting on my deck looking at the backyard where my BBQ had taken place 2 weeks earlier. The string lights I'd hung with such excitement now seemed to mock me with their cheerfulness. I thought about all the plans I'd put on hold over the years to support my family, the trips not taken, the experiences postponed, the savings depleted. What do I want? I asked myself aloud. It was a question I realized I'd rarely considered. I'd been so focused on what my family needed or wanted that my own desires had become secondary, sometimes invisible even to myself. That night I barely slept, wrestling with the decision ahead of me. By morning, though, a strange calm had settled over me. I knew what I needed to do, not out of anger or revenge, but out of self-respect and the hope for healthier relationships in the future. On Sunday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a cup of coffee growing cold beside me. For 3 hours I worked on drafting an email to my family, writing, deleting, rewriting, struggling to find the right words to express my feelings without attacking them. This wasn't about punishment. It was about establishing necessary boundaries. The final version was lengthy, but measured. I began by expressing how much I loved them and acknowledging the good memories we shared. Then I detailed how their actions, not just the vacation deception, but the pattern of financial manipulation, had deeply hurt me and damaged my trust. I've realized that my financial support has become expected rather than appreciated, I wrote. What began as my desire to help during genuine hardships has evolved into something unhealthy for all of us. I've enabled a dynamic where my worth seems measured by what I can provide rather than who I am. I explained that moving forward I would no longer be sending money for any reason. If there were true emergencies in the future, we could discuss them openly, but the automatic financial support they had come to expect was ending. This isn't about punishing you, I continued. It's about establishing boundaries that allow me to respect myself while still being part of this family. I need time to process everything that's happened and to rebuild trust. During this time, I'll be stepping back from regular communication. I concluded by stating that if they wanted to repair our relationship, I would need 3 things: acknowledgement of how their actions had affected me, a genuine apology, and a commitment to change the dynamics between us. I hope we can find a healthier way to be family, I finished. One based on mutual respect, honesty, and love that doesn't come with conditions or expectations. After reading it through one final time, I hit send before I could lose my nerve. Then I did something even harder. I temporarily blocked their numbers on my phone. I needed space to heal without being bombarded by their reactions, which I suspected would be defensive and accusatory rather than reflective. I wasn't wrong. Within an hour, they had moved their responses to email since they couldn't reach me by phone or text. Mom's email was a masterclass in guilt tripping. I can't believe my own son would abandon his family like this, after everything we've done for you. Your father and I sacrificed everything to give you a good life, and this is how you repay us. By turning your back on us when we need you, I didn't raise you to be so selfish and cruel. Dad's response was dismissive. You're blowing this whole thing way out of proportion, son. So we took a vacation and didn't tell you. It's not the end of the world. Everyone tells white lies now and then. This cold shoulder treatment is childish and beneath you. Call us when you're ready to act like an adult and talk this through like a man. Haley's email hurt the most. Wow, so you really were just an ATM all these years, huh? The minute we do something you don't approve of, you cut us off financially. Real nice, Marcus. Really shows how unconditional your love is. Maybe now you'll see we never really needed you or your money. We were just letting you feel important by helping us out. Good luck finding someone else to make you feel special. Their words stung, but they also confirmed what I already suspected. None of them were willing to acknowledge how their actions had affected me. None showed any real remorse. Instead, they turned it around, making me the villain for establishing boundaries. Over the next few days, the emails continued, ranging from angry accusations to attempts at manipulation. Mom tried the health angle. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of your behavior. If something happens to him, it will be on your conscience. Dad took the dismissive approach. This whole drama will blow over soon enough. You'll realize you're being ridiculous. Haley vacillated between anger and faux concern. We're all worried about you. This isn't like you. Maybe you need professional help. Not once did any of them address the actual issue, their deception, and the years of financial manipulation. After a week of this, I made the difficult decision to create email filters that would send their messages to a separate folder I could check when I felt emotionally ready. I needed space to heal without the constant barrage of guilt and accusations. During this time, my support system proved invaluable. Derek checked in regularly, often bringing food since he knew I wasn't eating properly. My colleague Jessica, who had noticed my distraction at work, offered a sympathetic ear and shared her own experience with setting boundaries with difficult family members. Even my neighbor Mike, who I barely knew beyond casual greetings, sensed something was wrong and invited me over for a beer and a basketball game, providing a few hours of normal social interaction when I desperately needed it. With Dr. Reynolds' guidance, I created a monthly budget that, for the first time in my adult life, didn't include allowances for family financial support. Instead, I set up automatic transfers to investment accounts and a vacation fund, something I'd never prioritized before. What would you do with your money if you weren't supporting your family doctor? Reynolds had asked during one session. The question had stumped me initially. I'd been sending money home for so long that I'd never really considered alternatives. But gradually I began to envision possibilities: traveling internationally, pursuing advanced certifications in my field, maybe even starting my own small construction company someday. I joined an online support group for adults dealing with difficult family relationships. The stories shared there helped me realize I wasn't alone in my struggles. Many members described similar patterns of financial manipulation and the guilt associated with setting boundaries. Their experiences and advice became a lifeline during particularly difficult days. As weeks turned into months, the hardest part was adjusting to the silence. For years I'd spoken to my family several times a week. Now there was nothing. Birthdays passed unmarked. The Thanksgiving holiday loomed, then came and went without the traditional family gathering. I spent it with Derek and his parents, instead grateful for their inclusion but acutely aware of the absence of my own family. Then came the rumors. Through a cousin who reached out via social media, I learned that my parents and Haley were telling extended family and friends that I had cut them off without explanation because I had become successful and forgotten where I came from. They painted themselves as victims of my callousness, rather than acknowledging their own behavior. Some distant relatives took sides, sending me messages expressing disappointment in how I was treating my family. Others reached out with confusion, seeking my side of the story. I responded to these with simple honesty, not to villainize my parents and sister, but to correct the false narrative they were spreading. The holidays were particularly difficult. Christmas had always been a big deal in our family, with traditions established since my childhood. Spending it without them left a hollow feeling that no amount of festive decorations or gatherings with friends could completely fill. Yet amid the pain, there were moments of clarity and progress. One night in January, I realized I had gone an entire day without thinking about the situation, a small victory that signaled healing. I began sleeping better. My focus at work improved. I started making plans for the future, my future without the constant consideration of how it would affect my ability to support my family. The most significant breakthrough came when I recognized that my worth wasn't tied to being needed. I could be valuable, lovable, and whole without being someone's financial safety net. This realization didn't come in a single epiphany, but gradually through therapy, reflection, and the process of rebuilding my life around my own needs and desires. By early February, nearly 6 months after the BBQ incident, I felt strong enough to check the folder containing my family's emails. There were dozens showing an evolution from anger and blame to confusion, and in some cases the beginnings of reflection. The most recent one from Haley struck a different tone than her earlier messages. "Marcus, I miss you. I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I'm not saying you're right about everything, but maybe we did take advantage sometimes. If you're willing to talk, I am too." It wasn't an apology, but it was the first acknowledgement from any of them that there might be some validity to my perspective. It was a small crack in the wall between us, not enough to rebuild a relationship, but perhaps enough to begin a conversation. 6 months after discovering my family's vacation deception, I found myself in a place I wouldn't have thought possible during those first painful weeks. The raw wound of betrayal had gradually healed into a scar, still visible, still tender when pressed, but no longer the open bleeding injury it had been. My perspective on self-worth and relationships had fundamentally shifted. I no longer measured my value by what I could provide for others, but by the quality of mutual respect and honesty in my connections. I'd learned that real love doesn't keep score, but it also doesn't exploit or take advantage. Financially, I was in a better position than I'd been in years. Without the constant drain of supporting my family, I'd been able to build a proper emergency fund, increase my retirement contributions, and even start planning for a trip to Europe, something I'd wanted to do since college but had always postponed because some family emergency took precedence. My relationship with extended family had evolved as well. After the initial period of confusion and choosing sides, many relatives had reached out individually. My Uncle Steve, my father's brother, called one evening in March. "I always wondered how you managed to support yourself and send so much money home," he admitted. "Your parents, they never lacked for anything, Marcus. Not like they led you to believe." These conversations were painful but clarifying. I learned that my perception of my family's financial situation had been largely manipulated over the years to maximize my sympathy and support. Then came Haley's letter in April, a handwritten note that arrived unexpectedly in my mailbox. Unlike her previous communications, this one showed genuine reflection. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about how we've treated you, especially me. It wasn't fair. You've always been there for me, and instead of appreciating it, I took advantage. I'm not saying this to get anything from you. I just want you to know I understand better now why you had to step back." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was an acknowledgement, the first real one from any of them. I waited a week before responding, wanting to be sure my reaction came from a place of healing rather than lingering hurt. I finally sent a brief email thanking her for the letter and suggesting we might talk by phone when I felt ready. That call happened in early May, almost 9 months after the BBQ incident. It was awkward at first, both of us careful with our words, uncertain of this new territory. But gradually we found our way to a more honest conversation than we'd had in years. "I miss my big brother Haley," admitted at one point, her voice catching. "Not the money or the help, just you. Your stupid jokes and how you always remember which movies I like, and how you can fix anything that breaks." "I miss you too, Hales," I said, using my old nickname for her for the first time in months. "But things have to be different going forward." "I know," she said quietly. "I'm working on it." That call opened the door to a tentative reconnection. We agreed to talk once every couple of weeks, with the understanding that financial support was off the table entirely. For the first time, we were building a relationship based on who we were to each other, not what we could provide. My parents were a more complicated situation. After receiving Haley's letter, I had unblocked their numbers but hadn't reached out directly. In June, my mother called. I answered after several rings, my heart pounding. "Marcus," she said, her voice softer than I'd expected. "Can we see you? Your father and I? We'd like to talk in person." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop, halfway between Portland and my hometown neutral territory, that wouldn't carry the emotional weight of either my home or theirs. I arrived early, choosing a table in the corner where we could speak privately. When they walked in, I was struck by how much older they looked. My father's shoulders seemed more stooped, my mother's face more lined. Whether this was actually true or just my perception after months apart, I couldn't say. The meeting began stiffly with surface-level conversation about health and weather. Then my father cleared his throat. "We haven't handled this situation well," he said, surprising me with this understatement. "Your mother and I have talked a lot about what you said in that email, about taking advantage, about not appreciating what you've done for us." My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but gesturing toward it. "We got used to depending on you, Marcus. It became expected. We didn't see how unfair that was." Their acknowledgement wasn't completely without defensiveness. My father still insisted that everyone exaggerates a little when asking for help, and my mother maintained that they deserved nice things sometimes. But beneath these justifications was a genuine recognition that they had hurt me and damaged our relationship. "We can't change the past," my father said near the end of our conversation. "But going forward, we want a relationship with our son, not his wallet." It wasn't the full apology I might have hoped for, but it was a starting point. We agreed to occasional family dinners with the clear understanding that our relationship was in a rebuilding phase and trust would take time to restore. Over the summer, I reconnected with parts of my extended family on my own terms. My cousin Amy invited me to her daughter's birthday party. My Aunt Ellen and I met for lunch when she visited Portland. These connections, once overshadowed by my more immediate family obligations, now flourished in new ways. I also built stronger relationships with the people who had supported me through the crisis. Derek and I began a weekend hiking tradition, exploring the beautiful trails around Portland. My coworker Jessica introduced me to her book club, expanding my social circle. I even started dating again, meeting Rachel at a local volunteer event where we both helped build a playground. When August rolled around, a full year since the BBQ incident, I decided to host another gathering. This time I invited only people who had proven themselves to be true friends, those who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. My backyard was once again filled with laughter and conversation, but this time without the undercurrent of anxiety I'd felt the previous year. Haley came, having earned back enough of my trust for an invitation. She brought a homemade dessert and genuine conversation, careful to respect the new boundaries between us. My parents were not invited. Our reconciliation was still too fragile, the trust too newly formed to withstand the scrutiny of my friends who knew what had happened. As I looked around at the people gathered in my yard, friends, old and new connections based on mutual respect and genuine caring, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been painful but necessary. I had learned that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most personal growth, that boundaries aren't walls but healthy definitions of where one person ends and another begins. The road ahead would not be perfect. There would still be difficult moments with my family misunderstandings and old patterns attempting to reassert themselves. But I now had the tools and strength to maintain the boundaries I needed to ensure that any relationship moving forward would be healthier than what came before. Real healing doesn't mean forgetting the hurt or pretending it never happened. It means learning from it, growing beyond it, and using that knowledge to build something better. It means recognizing your own worth independent of what you do for others. It means understanding that love, real love, never requires you to diminish yourself for someone else's benefit. As the summer evening deepened, and my guests gathered around the fire pit I'd built the previous year, I felt grateful for the difficult lessons I'd learned. They had brought me to this moment of authentic connection, of relationships based on who I was rather than what I could give. So I ask you, my viewers, What boundaries have you needed to set in your own life? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between self-respect and pleasing others? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else facing similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. I appreciate each and every one of you who takes the time to listen to these personal journeys. Remember, sometimes the healthiest thing you can say is no, even to the people you love most. Thank you for watching, and I wish you strength in your own boundary-setting journey.